weeks back, the Accra Metropolitan Assembly demolished some structures along the rail tracks at Aveno. However, several others still remain in other parts where the rail tracks passes, posing danger not only to themselves but, to the rail transport as well. So this morning, we want to explore plans by the Ghana Railways Development Authority to develop the sector which will ease congestion on Ghana's roads and also ensure ease in carting farm produce to the sites for sale. And I've got with me the CEO of the Ghana Railways Development Authority, Alidu Abubakar Siddiq, joining me. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Initial thoughts about what you've seen. I mean, this is reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real. And that's not how it's supposed to be in a way. So we're working towards streamlining these issues. We've been working with the city authorities, the AMA, the Lezekuku Municipal Assembly, the Tema Municipal Assembly, to assist in clearing some of these encroachments.
Okay. How close are we? How far are we from picture perfect?
Well, not very far, but far. Because as at now, this whole problem of locating structures very close to the rail line should have been a thing of the past. We quite remember for some few years we were not operating the rail lines, and that encouraged a lot of people to move very close, like you said. We started moving along the Accra-Tema line somewhere in 2007 when the lines were rehabilitated. And if you remember exactly, when we took off, there were incidents of accidents along the line because people were not aware that we started. But as of now, this has improved, that we're having some degree of sanity, but the structures are still there to be removed.
So, we have the Railway Company Limited, and then we have the authority.
Yeah.
What's the authority's mandate? What's the different jobs that the two are doing?
Yeah, you will remember this was a very vibrant railway some years back when it started in the early 90s. And for very obvious reasons, it slumped to some extent. And when it was realized that there was the need to rebuild the system based on internationally accepted standards and structures, it was realized that the rail industry, just like you have in the road sector, there should be an authority to regulate the operations of all the operators within the network. And that will permit private participation in the provision of rail services. Hitherto, we had only a government institution, that was the Ghana Railway Company Limited, which was the regulator, the operator, and the developer at the same time. And that was a very inefficient way of running a business. Although at that time, running the system as a business was not very key. It was just a public service provision that was being done by the Railway Company Limited. Now, to be able to sustain the industries, there was a need to involve the private sector in the provision of rail services. So, in effect, there should be a regulator who will make sure that there is a playing field between the government company and the private companies and between the private companies themselves. So there was then the need to create another institution, and the Ghana Railway Development Authority was created in 2008 by an Act of Parliament, Act 779. Ghana Railway Development Authority started operating in 2009. And henceforth, since 2009, the Ghana Railway Company Limited was to become just an operator.
Okay.
And the Railway Development Authority was to license other operators, at least so that there will be competition and improve efficiency and even improve the use of the infrastructure.
So as it is today, do we have other operators?
Unfortunately, we still have only Ghana Railway Company Limited as the operator, mainly because, for sure, most of the infrastructure is gone so low or bad that we needed to rebuild the infrastructure initially before you can then license more operators onto the system.
Private people interested anyway?
For sure, private people will be interested because elsewhere in the world, that's the practice. The services or the operations are provided by the private entities, whilst governments make sure that the infrastructure is put in place for that. So it's a worldwide accepted mode. Just like the roads, the government institution, which is the Ghana Highway Authority or the urban roads, the Department of Urban Roads or Feeder Roads, they provide the infrastructure. And the private individuals like myself and you will use their cars and pay for using the roads.
But so here we don't have enough tracks.
No, we had, if you quite remember, we had more than 1,000 kilometers of rail track in this country when the services were
vibrant.
Exactly. We're trying to rebuild the system, and that has been frankly speaking, very slow. You remember in 2007 when we opened the section between Accra to Asopotuna. In 2010, we extended it to the port at Tema. And then in 2012, we extended it to Community 1 at Tema. So now the rail services from Accra goes up to Community 1 at Tema. Okay. So it's a process that will take time, because it's very capital intensive, and you know the economy today isn't that vibrant for us to be able to move it very fast.
But are we not inviting private investors? Because if we have very positive outcomes, you know, when we are done, then we should have people investing in it, shouldn't we?
Yeah, definitely we should have, but you need to demonstrate and let them be convinced that there is a system that is working that can encourage private participation. And that's what we're trying to do now, to put the infrastructure, at least the minimum infrastructure in place, and get the private person or private entities to operate.
Okay, so what's the plan, even if you take Accra alone? And what's timelines are we giving ourselves? What should we picture in our minds right now?
You know, we are a government, and what we do reflects a lot on what is happening in the economy of the country. We realize that there is the need for a vibrant rail network, but at the same time, it is very, very expensive to provide. So we're moving steadily, but very slowly. We're now preparing to undertake the reconstruction of the rail lines from Accra to Nsawam. The current structure is not in a very good shape, and it doesn't allow a continuous service. It breaks. There are breaks very often due to derailments or due to certain portions of the track that need to be repaired once in a while. So we need to fix this line in such a way that we are able to provide a very efficient, safe services between Accra and Nsawam.
Okay.
But you realize that we have a network that was working all over the country, especially the southern part of the country. So we're not targeting only Accra. Currently, we're providing a rail infrastructure between Sekondi and Takoradi that is also going to serve the Sekondi-Takoradi metropolis because of the current developments that are taking place within.
So do I take it that the concentration for now is on rehabilitating the old tracks?
Exactly.
Before we begin to expand?
Yeah, for sure. You wouldn't like to be expanding when you have an existing network that is almost not working. So within the short to minimum term, our plans are that the existing network should be reconstructed, rebuilt, and then we can then extend it further to other parts of the country.
But how many of the trains do we have?
Trains, you mean, I don't know what you mean by trains, but we had a lot of trains that were running, and parts of those trains are still available. Only the infrastructure is not capable to take that. If you go to
Can you
Takoradi,
explain that?
Okay. If you go to Takoradi, we used to provide services for two mining companies, the manganese mine at Nsuta and the bauxite mine at Awaso.
Okay.
The rolling stock, I mean the trains, are still available, but sections of the track that go up to Awasu are no more capable of taking the rail stresses. When they move on it, they derail very often. So we stopped going to Awasu purposely because of that. But we're still going to Nsuta. And we have the capacity to still go to Awasu if we fix the infrastructure.
But how long would it take us to fix it? Because we were using it. I mean, if it was fetching us some good money, then we should have worked on it ASAP.
Yes, you know, this is a government institution, and investment into the sector will depend on a lot on revenue that is generated by government as well as the rail company. Unfortunately, during the years gone, there were some lapses in the provision of the necessary investment required. So that has led to the deterioration that took place. But that was so many years back. And definitely we need to rebuild it, but put in place a structure that will ensure sustainability in this situation now.
You know, when I used Accra as an example, and I said, paints a picture for us. Maybe I want to dream, but it's good for me to dream and think that maybe in the next 10 years, this is how we want Accra to look like. I can comfortably move from Ashoman and come to Kokomlimli, not driving. But is there a plan like that? Do we have things like that?
Like I said, that has been the plan ever since GRDA was created in 2009. We started with the Accra Tema line, and we've gotten it fixed far better than the Nsawam Accra line currently. We've gotten new trains on that line, and similarly we're planning to redevelop the Accra Nsawam line and provide new trains on that line. In fact, we're working on that project now currently. We've evaluated the proposal that was submitted, and we're trying to see how funding can be sourced for that project.
So for now, how are we funding?
For now, it's government. For now, everything is GOG. The current project that is taking place in Takoradi is being funded by government.
But we know that government funding, we cannot rely on government funding.
Well, for sure, there are certain sectors. There are certain sectors of the economy that, whether we like it or not, government must do something. Like the road sector. Almost all the roads that we build in this country are built by government.
But we also know that there are some, we can also get funding from other places. Even though GOG would fund, can get some input from other places as well.
Well, for sure, but
I mean, if you look at the N1.
Yeah, through GOG. What I mean is that government for sure will not have the funding available at any time, but government can source the funding. Just like did on the N1. Government sourced the funding from elsewhere. So similarly, government is sourcing funding for the rail infrastructure.
As an authority, can you not get funding yourself? As in private?
Yes. We are capable of pursuing that line of sourcing funding, but as at now, we don't have that capacity. You see, we've just been in existence for 4-5 years, and we don't have the resources to be able to go in unless we go through the Ministry of Finance or government to get the support of the guarantee from government. Then we can pursue that approach.
Okay.
But as at now, that's not the case.
Okay, but nothing prevents you from doing that, though?
No, we're just trying to build the capacity to be able to do that.
Okay. Yeah. Are you in total control in terms of regulation, or the Ghana Railway Company is taking some responsibility? Well,
for sure, like I started by saying initially it was only the Ghana Railway Company Limited that was in existence.
Yeah.
When we came into being, we're still having some challenges taking over completely those responsibilities that we have been assigned. Like all the assets of the railway that existed before our coming into being are now vested in us. But these were assets that were vested in Ghana Railway Company Limited. So the process of taking over these assets has been not very smooth anyway. It's been a bit rough. Because I believe in every situation people try to resist change. So just that's the issue plaguing the approach.
Okay.
The railway company, which used to own everything, which used to operate everything, is finding it very difficult relinquishing everything as it goes. So gradually we get in there, but it's taking some time that shouldn't have.
How frustrating is that to you as CEO of the authority?
Well, for sure it's very frustrating. We've been having meetings with them to smoothen this approach, but it's taking some time. It's very, very frustrating.
How is that hindering work in progress?
It is for sure hindering work in progress, but we getting them to assist in this direction is working now. In fact, there's been a lot of improvement from the time we started. Now we're getting very well, and we hope in a year or two things will be in the way they should be.
You know, for some Ghanaians who have had the opportunities to travel, and they know that officials such as yourself also do a lot of travels, sometimes they wonder, why don't we just copy what's happening somewhere and just do what is happening somewhere too?
That's what exactly we're trying to do. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but the funding has always been the problem. Elsewhere, for instance, currently Ethiopia is rebuilding its rail network, is spending over $3 billion in that. Nigeria is building their rail network. I've visited them to see the works they are undertaking. They are spending almost getting to $8 billion US. Huge sums of money.
And that's from the federal government?
Yes, huge sums of money go into rebuilding rail networks. But the good thing about it is that when built, it stays almost forever. That's it. And the impact to the economy is huge. Apart from the fact that it helps in moving exports and imports in and out of the country, it provides that type of services within the country that boost trade and commerce between cities and towns. You move people in mass. It helps grow the GDP of the country. No country has developed without a rail network. No country.
And from the experiences, from the examples that you're sharing with us, is it the sole responsibility in terms of funding? Is it coming from the governments? Because we are trying to learn from other countries as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
In most cases, it comes from government. In most cases. But where there is a vibrant private sector which is ready to invest, like in the UK, you have a lot of private, almost all the operators in the UK are private. But for sure they have some support of some kind from government to make sure. All governments have realized the importance of the rail network. So investing in it is not something they shy away from.
Is it a priority for us as a country?
That's the point. That's exactly what is happening to us.
But how do you feel? You think it's a priority?
I think it's a priority because the rail system facilitates the growth in all the other sectors. All the other sectors. If we take, for instance, take the road network. We have very heavy vehicles that ply our roads, render very newly constructed roads damaged. If there is an efficient rail network, it takes off all these heavy vehicles from the roads, and the roads will then be there for a longer period of time before they get deteriorated. That's one. Two, the rail systems have very low consumption of fuel as compared to road vehicles. So if you have most movements of freight being done by rail, there is a saving that you make in terms of your fuel consumption as a country. So, you know, fuel is almost virtually imported using hard currency. If you are able to reduce that burden on any country, the effect is huge. The same way you look at environmental effects. Within the rail network or the rail systems, pollution of the environment is minimal. Unlike when you have a lot of road vehicles moving in the cities or even between the cities, intercity trains, very, very environmentally friendly. It impacts on the health of the people. It impacts on everything that we do, farming, moving foodstuffs. In fact, you realize that when the system was working perfectly, to some extent, foodstuffs in Accra were relatively cheaper.
Seeing that this is really important with all the positives,
yeah,
why are we not doing all we can to get the necessary funding to build it?
I think we're doing all that we can, but like at any particular time, there's something we might try to consider more important or as a priority. And that has been the situation. But everybody knows for sure that if we are able to fix the rail networks, there's going to be a huge impact on the GDP of this country.
Am I safe to say that funding is frustrating the efforts?
Frustrating, I don't know whether that's frustrating, but funding
I think what I really want to ask you,
yeah,
honestly, is who is frustrating you?
Well, I understand the system very well. It's not that someone is frustrating me, but I at times get frustrated, actually.
Yeah. Okay. I've got somebody commenting because we put the issue on our Facebook page,
okay.
facebook.com/Joy News on TV, and somebody saying something there. I just want to pull it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so open up. All right. Prince Adika Godsway, you know, after seeing the pictures in that short documentary, says, I think this is very appalling and totally unacceptable. So I guess in wrapping up, just want to say, we now understand what you're doing in terms of the tracks, trying to rehabilitate what already exists and trying to fix some of the trains on some of these tracks. But what happens to the human beings, the persons who have made some of these areas their homes?
This is very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. The impact of this approach to settlements is affecting the infrastructure itself. You realize that people tend to cross from one side of the rail to the other by just walking across at any point. Now, even those level crossings that have been provided to private individual homes is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. Most of them are not guarded. What I mean by guarded is that there isn't anybody who controls the movement across those level crossings because they go to private homes. It's not acceptable.
But ideally, somebody should be there.
Ideally, somebody should be there, but it's not acceptable to provide crossings to private houses across the rail network. What is happening here is that there is a railway reservation within which no settlement is allowed. Because if you provide those settlements, they don't form part of the general planning of that vicinity from the city authorities. So they are not accessible by road. They are not provided with any means of disposal of waste. They are not provided with anything because it's not supposed to be part of the plan of the vicinity from the city authorities.
So why don't we see houses?
That's the point. Indiscipline. Just indiscipline.
Is it indiscipline or some official not doing their work to stop people from building?
Well, it could be that, but the person who is also building, what does he think he's doing?
Well, they need a place to live.
There's no access. You don't just get up and say, I want a place to live, so I'm coming to build on the road because I need a place to live.
Well, but if I build on the road, I start the project and nobody stops me.
Yeah.
And I complete it. I have my 2-bedroom or my 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
And I start having children and, then I'm comfortable.
Well, that's...
And if there hasn't been any incidents for a while, I'll be more comfortable with it.
You see, what has been done by the AMA, that's what should have been done long time ago. But you realize that even the reactions from public or from other individuals is not encouraging. Currently, we're doing similarly in Takoradi. I would like to express our appreciation to the MC of Secondary Takoradi Metropolitan Assembly, Captain Kujo. He's assisted us a lot in demolishing most of these structures. And to be frank with you, what has been done by the mayor of Accra, we are very, very happy about that. We've been visiting him on several occasions, seeking this assistance. We've been to, like I told you earlier, the Lejekukukro MC to assist us demolish some of these structures. In fact, since 2002, some of our projects, pardon?
Do you resettle these people? Is it part of the plan?
No, no. Anybody who encroached on railway land will not be resettled. We've been warning people day in, day out, every day. We've written on all the structures on daily basis that it's not allowed. It creates a problem for us, but we don't have the capacity to do demolitions. In fact, when the system was a normal system, I would like to put it that way.
When things were working?
When things were working. We had staff who patrolled the sections of every 4 miles and make sure that nobody comes within the reservation to encroach. In fact, with time, there was so much indiscipline that some of our own workers got themselves convinced by others, and they allowed them to start settling. And it got to a point that we were unable to control it anymore. And that's what led to the situation that was prevailing some few days ago. So for sure, there are a lot of challenges with such settlements. They are just not acceptable. They don't form part of the plans of the development of those areas. They are not accessible by road, and the people are compelled. There was a comment that these people use the rail lines as their as a means of,
from going to one community to the other.
It's an offense. It's an offense to walk along the rail lines. And even recently, I was somewhere and I saw a motorcyclist horribly riding on the rail lines, despite the sleepers bumping and shaking him all around. He was still riding. I mean, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, but this goes to buttress the point that these are not supposed to be areas where human beings have to live. That's why the areas have not been developed. So there are no roads.
Yeah.
You find that there are no facilities.
Even where to dispose your refuse are not provided. So they tend to use the rail corridor or the rail lines as their disposal points.
Amazing.
Which, to be frank with you, is not acceptable.
Well, we hope that the authorities will give you the necessary support so we can get structures that are not supposed to be situated in these areas out. But thank you so much for your time this morning.
And thank you.
You've opened up the issues to us. We better understand things, and I'm grateful.
Thank you.
My guest, CEO of the Ghana Railways Development Authority, Alidu Abubakar Siddiq. We've been talking about the railways in our country. Just on a lighter note, before we bring you our AM talk, this issue makes me want to laugh, but I don't know what it would do to you. And Fred, my director, as usual, will bring it to your screen. So, Michael Jackson's father, his name is Joe Jackson. He suffered a stroke after taking 3 Viagras in Brazil, we're told. That's the old man. He hangs out with very young girls, and he is 87-year-old. And we're told that he suffered a stroke and 3 heart attacks after a night of partying with younger women in Brazil, amid claims that he took 3 Viagra pills. So the 87-year-old flew into the country 2 weeks ago for a pleasure trip said to include a $200,000 birthday, $200,000 birthday blowout in his honor, but ended up being rushed to hospital on the eve of the celebration. That's him and his girlfriend. Check that out. There will be more showbiz later on here on the AM show, but stay with me. I'll come back with 2, and I know it's most of you, some of your favorite guests on our AM Talk segment. Stay with us.